Hey, good morning. Welcome to both channels. I'm going to put this on both channels. This isn't the one that I had planned to put on either of the channels this morning, but it applies to both, and I want to get this out there. I will put up the others that I'd already planned, and I apologize for the reflection in my glasses. Probably makes me look pretty weird, but the computer screen here, and I haven't figured out how to do this yet so that it doesn't happen, but I want to read a couple of stories. I want to talk about the evil that surrounds us, and I think many people are unaware of. Those of us who have made our living dealing with the worst of humankind aren't surprised by these things, even though when they happen, our disgust meters are still able to register something, but the average person just doesn't understand how widespread, how prevalent true evil is, and where it is. I'm going to read a couple of stories, and I think there's also this idea that all the bad stuff happens in the cities, and that's another one of the reasons that I want to talk about this. I have two situations here that will just blow you away that happened in small towns. The first one, it happened up here in Excelsior Springs, which is a small town just north of Kansas City. This has been on the local news for a while. It just now hit the national news. But it's been going on. But Excelsior Springs is a cute little town. It's about 10,000 people. Well thought of. Everybody who lives in Excelsior Springs loves living in Excelsior Springs, and people have always thought about Excelsior as the typical wonderful American small town. I'm just going to read this article, then I'm going to tell you read another one down in Arkansas. Okay, the headline on this is this was carried a whole lot of different places. I just happened to bring it up on Yahoo, and I'll post as I always do, I'll post the links to these articles on the Patreon channels where this will appear, so that you can read it for yourself if you're with us on Patreon. If you're not, I wish you would be. And share it with other people. I think it's important, and we'll talk more about that. Okay, it says a Missouri woman escapes weeks-long rape, torture after alleged captor took his child to school. The body of the article. A Missouri man is in custody after a woman allegedly escaped his captivity and alerted neighbors for help. Timothy Marion Hazlitt, Jr., 40, was charged Friday night with kidnapping and rape of an unnamed woman in Excelsior Springs, Missouri, about 30 miles northeast of Kansas City, according to the Clay County Sheriff's Department. Sheriff's deputies responded to the address after initial witness reports came in about 7:47 a.m. on Friday that a woman was banging on doors and screaming for help. Neighbors told news outlets, including NBC Kansas City, that the woman, who attempted to get help from multiple homes, appeared malnourished and had a metal collar wrapped tightly around her neck. One neighbor said she attempted to call 911, but the woman became frightened, claiming that Hazlitt would kill them both if she notified the police. Then the victim fled to another neighbor's house. Now, I know that some people will say, well, why did she flee that house and go to another's house? And I'll just tell you that when people are going through things like this, that everything they do does not make sense. Okay, because they're not making sense after what this woman has been. She was picked up. I assume the article is going to talk about this. He grabbed her in September, and she's been kept in a dungeon-like situation ever since then, repeatedly raped and tortured. I'll see if we get to that point in this article. Sierra Tharp, whose grandmother invited the victim into her home until authorities arrived, told KSHB about the shocking incident. She heard the woman screaming and came knocking on the door, so she opened the door, and the lady said, "You have to help me. I've been raped. I've been held captive." Witnesses said the woman appeared to have ligature marks around her wrists and ankles and duct tape around her neck. Court records Said when Excelsior Springs police arrived, the victim had on a latex attire and a padlock fastened the collar to her neck. Yeah, apparently it was a metal collar. It doesn't say in this, but I've read several news items about it. And you know how each news item includes some things and leaves out others. EMS workers had to remove the lock because it restricted her breathing. And then there's a picture of the woman here. I won't say her name. On here, I'm assuming that it's the woman, and usually they won't identify the person here. So I'm not going to say anything about that. If you go and read the article over on Patreon, you'll see that. Court documents said the woman, who is 22 years old, claimed a man named Timothy picked her up on Prospect Avenue in Kansas City in early September. Prospect Avenue is not the best part of Kansas City. For those of you who don't know, it's the main line through the hood, and we can suspect why she might have been there, but that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter a bit, except that she probably put herself in harm's way. Now there's a lesson there, of course, and people will immediately say, well, that's the danger of living in the city. Well, remember, the guy who did it came from Excelsior Springs, lived in Excelsior Springs, a nice little town of 10,000. Okay, he picked her up in Prospect Avenue in Kansas City in early September, so she's held for over a month. The suspect, identified as Hazlitt, allegedly brought the woman to his home and locked her in a small makeshift room in the basement, where he allegedly whipped her and frequently raped her in the following weeks. Marks on the woman's back were consistent with being whipped, according to court records. Per CBS Kansas City affiliate KCTV, the woman reported she did not know the suspect. The woman says she escaped the house when her captor, here's an important thing, took his child to school that morning. People have this idea that people who have children are fine. Sickos come in all flavors. And you can imagine then that this was going on in a house where this child was also living. It doesn't say anything about a mother being around or a wife or anything. I suspect, well, I have my suspicions on that. I won't get into it. On our way to the hospital, the victim pointed out Hazlitt's home from the ambulance as it went by. At around 4 on Friday, authorities issued a search warrant for the suspect's house, and they requested Kansas City Police Department CSI unit to respond to the scene. That's because the smaller towns don't have those units. The search drew the attention of many in the area, prompting the Clay County Sheriff's Office to dispense rumors of dead bodies being found on the property. There are rumors on social media that there are additional deceased victims, officials said, but there is no evidence of that at the time. So they pulled over this guy. They caught this guy by pulling him over on a traffic stop later that day and busted him on an unrelated animal control violation, and now have charged him with first-degree rape, first-degree kidnapping, and second-degree assault. Celia Tharp told KCTV the victim claimed to have had friends who, quote, didn't make it, alluding to other possible victims. She made a comment that, quote, he killed my friends, said Tharp. She just kept repeating it. And those of you who have dealt with trauma victims, especially, I mean, who of us can really, imagine the kind of prolonged trauma this woman went through? They will act like this, that she just kept repeating it. So they're looking into that. She made mention of other victims, but there's no sign of it that we have found at the time. Said the police. A cadaver dog was brought in, and let's see. There was. It might have been included in another article that I read, but she did indicate that there may have been other people who were held there or killed. And I'm sure that the investigation will bring up more of that. Okay, that's Excelsior Springs, Missouri. Let's move on to Arkansas. And I'm just going to do these two stories here again. This is out of Boone County, Arkansas, which is right on the Missouri state lines on the northern border of Arkansas. It's right south of Branson, where we go so often. It's a beautiful area. Love driving through there. And it doesn't say what town this occurred in, if any. But if it's in Boone County, pretty much, it might not have been in a town. It might have been, just in the county. But if it was in a town, it was in a small town. Here's the headline. This is from Oxygen True Crime. Arkansas dad allegedly amputated leg with chop saw while 5-year-old daughter watched. Shannon Cox allegedly told his wife he was both Satan and Jesus before severing his right leg with a cut-off saw in front of the couple's 5-year-old child. Okay, let's get into this for just a second, shall we? An Arkansas dad has been arrested for endangering the welfare of a child after allegedly cutting off his own leg with a standing saw in front of his 5-year-old daughter. Authorities were dispatched to 48-year-old Shannon Cox's Boone County home on August 2nd. This is an older story, but I'm just including this in here to make the point. After receiving reports, he had amputated his right leg. Upon arrival, a deputy found Cox naked outside his home. Anybody who's been in law enforcement will tell you it's always surprising how many times you show up to one of these things and the people are naked. Something about that. I don't know what it is. Well, I do have my opinions on what it is, but I won't express it. So they found Cox naked outside his home, missing a portion of his right leg. Cox allegedly told officers that he had used a chop saw to carry out the amputation. The Arkansas father's severed limb was still lying on the saw when the first deputy arrived at the home. Can you imagine that? I mean, can you imagine the process of this guy cutting off his leg with a saw? Were drugs involved? You think? But I would say also there was, of course there were mental issues here, but there's something beyond that, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Cox was later airlifted to a hospital in Springfield, Missouri. It's unclear if doctors were able to reattach the leg. Police had recovered a rigid brand cutoff machine from the house, which was covered in blood spatter next to the blood-splattered wall, of course. And then they include in the article a picture of a rigid chop saw. I don't know. Yeah. Outside the home, investigators located a white sedan with the hood popped, a 20-pound. Well, it doesn't matter what they found in there. It doesn't matter. They of course took the 5-year-old daughter. Now let's find one more interesting thing in this story. Shannon Cox's wife, Sandy Cox, told investigators in an interview the following morning that her husband had been acting odd all day long and had allegedly rambled about being both Jesus and Satan. Sandy said he was telling her that he was Jesus Christ and she needed to get right with the Lord, charging documents stated. Sandy said he then became violent towards her and said that he was Satan. Shannon Cox then threatened to twist off his wife's head, according to her account. Sandy Cox told law enforcement she'd left the residence about 8:15 and went to a friend's home because she feared her spouse would, quote, kill her. Here's another interesting thing. She claimed she didn't take her 5-year-old daughter, who was present in the home, because she, quote, wasn't worried that Shannon Cox would harm the child, per the case's affidavit. Man, the couple's daughter, who is said to be in a state of shock, can you imagine that? When interviewed by police, told detectives she was at the home when her dad cut his own leg off. So Shannon and Sandy are ultimately both charged with felony counts of endangering the welfare of a minor. Good. Officials haven't released a motive in the incident, which they termed bizarre, you think? Okay. Well, just a couple of normal days in small town America, right? Well, of course, they're not normal days in small town America or any town America, but the point is this, and we've talked about there being no safe places anymore. I hear a lot of people have said, get out of the cities. If you're still in the city, you're crazy. This is both political and preparedness. There are no safe places. As you know, I've worked both big city police and county sheriff and small town marshal. And I'll be real honest with you. While you might get more in a city, I'm not sure that you get more per capita, because there is some really, really strange and sickening stuff happens outside the cities. My point is this. Where does this come from? Now, it comes from obviously mental derangement. And to the extent that drugs are involved, usually in these cases, you'll find out that they were, and somehow these people are drug users. But at the basis of it all is evil. That, and I have been aware, there have been so many cases just in our area over the years that you can't check it off to anything except evil. Now, where that evil comes from is probably a topic for the other channel, but evil is all around you. And that's what everyone needs to understand. You can be careful, but the average person's degree of care may or may not prepare them to deal with true evil when evil raises its head. Maybe I should restate that. You might be able to deal with it, but usually you're not going to be ready to recognize it. Okay. The lesson here is that there are people out there, and more than you could imagine, because the average person, these stories don't usually make, well, I say sometimes they make the news. Often they don't make national news. And the average person doesn't realize how often these things happen. I'll put it that way. And so they're not going to have that in the back of their mind. They're not going to be suspicious. They're not going to have in the constant back of their mind the understanding, the realization that evil exists. And you have to always be ready to respond immediately and effectively to this. Now, from the preparedness standpoint, on integrative preparedness, I think it's very obvious to see what we need to be ready for. Always be in a situation to where you can defend yourself against evil. This just happened to be in situations that most people would not find themselves in, but realize that the perpetrators of both of these stories, and I mean, you can go to websites and you can find a whole list of the most sickening things that you'd ever want to hear about, and you probably wouldn't want to spend a morning doing that because it would ruin your day. I got off track there for a second because my mind started thinking about, I was actually thinking about another case here in Kansas City, but realize that these people are out there in the world, okay? They are all around you. You might have been walking past one of these people in the grocery store yesterday. You might have been pumping gas next to one of these people earlier today. These people are out in the world, and there are more of them than you think, than the average person could imagine. Now, from the standpoint of the other channel, American Reversion, realize that at the core of the problems in our country, we know it's the collapse of the morals of our country, and at the center of that really is evil. The fight that we are fighting, what we're preparing against, finds its basis in evil, and what we are fighting politically also finds its basis in evil. While the battle itself might manifest itself physically, the true battle is spiritual, and it's nothing. I was going to say nothing more, because it is the pinnacle battle, but it's no more complicated than good and evil. And to the extent you recognize it, you're going to be better able to prepare yourself to deal with it when it arises in your world. So, okay, I'm going to leave it at that. We know that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow, and stories like this help us to realize the importance of not just preparing for ourselves, but keeping our eyes open about what's going on in the world, and getting involved if we can, if we can somehow be of some help to someone. And then, of course, when we talk about American reversion, America needs a reversion. It needs to go back to a more solid foundation, the foundation on which our country was based, and that was a religious, a spiritually sound foundation. So anyway, I will be back later with the videos that I had intended to put up today for both channels, but I felt this was important to start the day on this, and I hope that you'll share this one. Share this with people that you know, because most people have no understanding of the kind of evil that's out there. And so often when they do hear about something like this, they go, oh my gosh, that's terrible, that's shocking, that's just unbelievable. And then they don't want to think about it anymore. Such is the problem, and until it touches them. Okay. All right. You all have a good day. I'll be back and talk to you all later. Bye-bye.